Walking slow down my own street, strangers smile when our eyes meet. Doesn't matter at all.
Welcome to the Kindness Matters podcast, a show that celebrates the powerful truth that kindness can change the world. Every week I aim to shine a light on people and organizations making a positive difference in their communities, proving that compassion, empathy, and connection still thrive, even in challenging times. This podcast is about more than good stories, though. It's about real impact. Through heartfelt conversations, inspiring acts, and everyday examples of humanity, the Kindness Matters podcast invites listeners to rediscover the power of kindness as a force for healing, growth, and genuine connection. If the message of this show resonates with you, please share it with your friends and family. Each share helps spread the light a little further, because when it comes to kindness, the ripple effect is limitless.
Voice of the crowd, I see neighbors helping.
Hey, hello, and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. You are listening to the Kindness Matters podcast, and I am your host, Mike Rathbun. And when I say thank you for joining us, I sincerely mean that. All of our lives are very, very busy, and our days are very, very full. And the fact that you took 30-ish minutes out of your day to listen to this podcast, to join in this community of kindness, really means a lot to me, and I thank you so much. Just want to plug one more time. We have a merch store now, and you will find the link for that in the show notes. All the proceeds from anything that is purchased in that merch store, hats, coffee cups, book bags, whatever, 100% of the proceeds go to nonprofits, either nationally or locally here in Minnesota. So make sure to check out the show notes after you're done. And in the meantime, while you're thinking about what you might want to buy, we have a fantastic show for you today. Today on the podcast, we're honored to welcome Whitney Price, the founder and executive director of Unpuzzled Parents Connect, a nonprofit built on the belief that no parent or caregiver should ever feel alone on the journey of raising a child with special needs. Whitney's work is rooted deeply in real-world experience, from navigating the emotional and systemic challenges of special needs parenting to building a community that empowers families through connection, education, and support. And in a world that often equates strength with stoicism, Whitney brings a powerful and compassionate voice to the idea that kindness, empathy, and compassion are not weaknesses. They're courageous choices that strengthen our communities, heal our hearts, and transform lives. Whether she's hosting heartfelt conversations on her Get Unpuzzled podcast, or creating judgment-free spaces where caregivers feel truly seen and supported, Whitney models what it means to lead with heart, proving that empathy, far from being soft, is a catalyst for resilience and real change. Welcome to the show. That was a very long intro. Welcome to the show, Whitney.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I meant every single word of it. And I can't believe I didn't mess up the word stoicism. When I wrote it, I thought, do you really want to use that word? Because that's going to trip you up. And it didn't. So there. You're such a creator. Talk to me about Unpuzzled Parents Connect. This was born out of your personal experience, right?
Yes. Unpuzzled Parents was born from two parents who were absolutely struggling emotionally, financially. We're under so much self-isolation. Um, this started when my husband and I received our son's diagnosis. Connor is 7.5, and he was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And that rocked our world. We are in West Virginia, where we are the lowest ranked in the nation for both resources for the disability community and also funding. And in our neighborhood or our neck of the woods, we couldn't just search anywhere to find these therapies that were needed. So that first year of Connor's diagnosis, where it was absolutely, it was quite a journey. So
Oh, I agree.
with that struggle, that's more or less how Unpuzzled kind of came about. We started as a support group and just organically built from there.
But and wow, what a thing to build, right? I mean, what's more difficult, advocating for your child with autism or trying to start a nonprofit?
Advocating is, I'm still going to
Advocating
pick that.
is
Advocating
more
is
challenging?
still difficult because it all goes back to the lack of resources in the state of West Virginia and just general knowledge. You don't receive a handbook at all when you're a new parent, let alone when your child is diagnosed with a high level of support needs that Connor
Yeah.
has. He wasn't just diagnosed with autism, but at the first 4 years of his life, he was completely nonverbal. So there was a level of communication that was a complete barrier for us. And just not knowing who to turn to, doctors will tell you to go do different types of therapy, occupational speech, ABA therapy, physical therapy, behavioral supports. But if you haven't been in that world before, you don't know that there's insurance rejections to overcome. You don't know that the life and the story that you'd already put in your mind is going to completely change. The perfect picture that you had planned is
Yeah.
now wrote in a different language in a completely different country. And that's what it felt like when we received that diagnosis. So I would say advocating, although I love the nonprofit world and it's a heck of a um, struggle to build from the ground up, it's still so rewarding. But advocating is still the most, I think, needed for our community in this area.
Well, that's probably where the concept for your nonprofit started, right? We need people, A, to be aware of, what's needed, and then B, um, I lost it. It was right there.
To
To,
accept,
yeah. So, okay, so talk to me about how this is a show about kindness, right? So how can kindness actually make somebody a stronger advocate for their child or their community instead of a pushover?
I think kindness is something that is really rooted in the person. I think it is really built on your own character. So when we think about advocacy, a lot of the times we think of this hard-shelled person that is going in and more or less leading a rally. They're yelling, they're screaming, they've got signs that they're holding up, we want justice. And a lot of
Yeah,
that is advocacy. A lot of
sure.
advocacy does have emotion behind it, especially if it's your child that you're advocating for. But we always leave with facts over our feelings and knowing our child's rights, knowing our rights, and that helps a lot. But I think kindness has to be rooted in the person. So you'll find some advocates that um, maybe give advocacy a bad name, but I don't think that necessarily means that they're a bad person. It might also mean that they have had such a long journey of being turned down, being told no, not knowing their rights, not knowing their child's rights. But I do think it's just overall rooted in the person.
Yeah. Uh, And can you give us a sense of, for some of us that don't have children in that situation, um, What does it look like? I mean, you had to probably research to find out what your rights were and your child's rights and all of that. What does that look like on a daily basis? Is it just days spent on the internet researching, or how does that work?
A lot of it is lived experience. Advocacy is in so many areas of a person's personal life, whether they have a disability or not. But when they are fighting for a child with a disability, you're going to have advocacy in the form of fighting with insurance, knowing that there's different levels of rejections that you may go through, but also knowing how to overcome them. That's something that we work really hard on training parents on. And then, depending on where your child is, there could be advocacy in the medical field. An example that I'll give you that happened to us, we were traveling for one of Connor's appointments that was 2 hours away. And we were going to get there right on time. But we called ahead of time, letting them know, hey, we were having some trouble transitioning from the parking lot to the inside. He is not a fan of doctor offices like most kids,
Yeah.
but sensory overload really impacts him on a deeper level than most typical 7-year-olds. So, what would take some people just unbuckling, getting out of the car might take us 20 to 30 minutes. So, we made the phone call, let them know, hey, we might be just a couple of minutes late. We're here. We're just struggling with the transition. And they said, well, we'll let you know if they can still see you. We'll have to let the doctor know. We drove 2 hours to get there. And we
Oh my
also knew
goodness.
that with his disability, you couldn't just deny a child based upon their struggle. So when we finally got inside, they tried to deny us the appointment. And then they tried to say, well, we don't really work with kids. They're not really a pediatric doctor, but we were referred there because they were a pediatric doctor. So having advocacy in that moment, knowing that you can't, just turn us away based upon
Yeah.
him having a transition from the parking lot to the inside. But then also, you have to have a strong enough heart and mind to stand up and say, okay, I'm not just going to leave. I will patiently wait. But we were on time. We were struggling in the parking lot, so it's not like we were 20 minutes late and just no showed, no called. Um, so advocacy is in so many different areas. If you're a child that's getting ready to go to school and to an IEP meeting, there's a level of advocacy that you're going to have to go through. You have to know your child's rights, guardianship when they're transitioning from, not being an adult into adulthood. You're going to have to know your rights. So there's so many different areas where a child would need to either have self advocacy or the parent would have to know to advocate for them. But it's lifelong. It is something that
Yeah.
will stay with us for his whole life.
Wow. Um, and now I don't know the makeup of where you are, but I would imagine that for for people with disabled children, it's not like, you know, you're all next door to each other, right? I mean,
Right.
you're spread apart. And Unpuzzled Parents Connect was founded so no caregiver feels alone. How have you seen compassion in that community turn isolation into connection and action? Because I
I
think
think,
sometimes go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the biggest piece that we're able to support parents on is that emotional connection level.
Yeah.
Um, when you're a parent that's newly diagnosed, you go through so many different emotions that first year. And even after that first year, you're always constantly going through emotions. There's the grieving process, there's a bit of denial, there's self isolation. So when you're able to connect with another parent on that type of level, I think that's just invaluable. And I think
Yeah.
compassion will come out a lot in that. Um, And that's something that is deeply rooted within our organization. That was the very first program that we had, was our support group. And that is essentially how we started. We started with just coffee meetups. So parents, whether it was moms, dads, siblings even, could come and just share, and they could laugh together. We could just have a relaxing environment, but that catered a lot to the emotional support and connections that parents are really craving when they're alone and completely isolated.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine how good that must feel to be able to connect with a human being who knows almost exactly what you're going through, and to be able to talk and share your triumphs and your failures, because there will be both, right?
Sure. It
Um,
is amazing. There's really nothing like meeting another parent, even though autism is such a broad spectrum and there's so many different variances of
right,
support. It is so comforting to know that we're walking a similar journey and we're probably having to overcome a lot of the same obstacles, whether it's medical providers, um, advocating in different areas, or just the lack of knowledge and how much our children are changing. So,
right.
but that emotional connection is really everything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because uh, and it's the same with other type of support groups, but I just can't even imagine um, raising a child and not having that connection to somebody else who knows what you're going through. The isolation must be just overwhelming.
It was. We more or less that first year, not only did we not have a good understanding of what autism was, we had a general idea, but we had your stereotypical idea. We had the Rain
Right.
Man. We knew about
Probably the
that.
same one I've got.
Most people,
Yeah,
we weren't educated on it. We knew of, Love on the Spectrum and The America's Got Talent, children that had these high IQs and hidden talents in some way. We had no idea that there were different support levels needed. So when Connor was diagnosed, my husband and I, we didn't want to tell anyone. We just thought, okay, what if they're wrong? What if some
yeah,
people have told us he's going to grow out of it by the age of, by the time he's 7, 8, a teen, he won't have autism anymore. And, of course, you go to Dr. Google, you start your own research and
yeah,
finding your own unsolicited advice and all of these, you know, crazy antics that you'll read online. Hey, take this vitamin. They need to play with this toy. They need early intervention, but make sure it's this type of therapy. And then also work your full-time job, be a mom
yeah,
and try to keep up with his full-time therapy. So that first year was absolutely depressing. It was us not saying anything, having to tell our work and our jobs that we needed flexible scheduling, which wasn't a great conversation to have. We're both in the auto background. So he was a general manager at another dealership. I was a finance manager at another dealership. And it was just very hard. And because we didn't have any support from family, we weren't living around family, and the family that um, did know about Connor's diagnosis kept saying, "Don't label the baby. Don't ever label that baby." So we didn't. We didn't talk about it. We didn't socialize with others. We just acted like if we can figure this out soon enough, then we won't have to tell anyone. He won't be labeled. And a couple years from now, it'll be like it never happened. That was so far from the truth.
yeah,
And the same thing when we talked about Medicaid. Connor was able to get on West Virginia waiver. That is a very, very a very high level of support needs that he had to meet to be able to qualify. And he did. He's one of 6,000 in the state of West Virginia that
well,
they felt was qualified to meet the criteria. But that saved us. That Medicaid
sure,
was able to help pay for a lot of the therapies that we were taking him to. So that saved us from having to sell our home, having to go bankrupt. I mean, there's so many different things. And we were told, don't talk about it. Don't, just keep it to yourself. Such a bad taboo around all these things. Same with therapy and counseling and wellness and mental health. No one really feels the need to talk about it. But if we don't, then we can't break down those stigmas. So that is
Right.
part of our mission as well.
Yeah. And you had touched a little bit on advocating for services. Um, Now, and services and insurance are two different things, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
need insurance to get the services, but um, I'm pretty sure that a lot of parents feel that they have to be harsh or combative to get services. How can parents be firm and persistent while staying grounded in empathy for themselves and for the providers?
It's always difficult when you're a parent that has been told your child needs this specific type of therapy. So we make the phone call to, let's say, the provider. Maybe they don't have any appointments available, or maybe the wait list they tell you is 6 months long. And then you call the other provider and they tell you the same thing. And then the next provider's 30 minutes away, and you know that you can't make that work. So
Oh,
let's say finally you're given that appointment and the insurance says, we're not going to cover it. There's been so many times that a parent at that point has been told no, or we're not going to do it, or it can't happen, that it is so difficult for them to maintain that type of empathy. But what we let them know is there's other people on the other side of the phone. They're not the ones rejected you, and we can overcome it. We can make sure that the child has medical necessity papers. We can make sure that we know the explanation of benefits. We can get letters from the doctors and physicians to show why the child needs the therapy, and we can overcome it. We just have to know the proper steps to take. So I think you're right. Everything does go back to the empathy piece. And sometimes it is such a struggle when you've been told, no, this can't happen. It's not going to happen. And you feel like you're failing as a parent because your baby or your child is so far behind on the mile markers that they're supposed to be hitting. They tell you from the age of, since a child is an infant, they tell you there's milestones that have to be met. When your
yeah,
child's not meeting them, who's to blame? You internalize that and you go, "Oh my
sure.
god, he's only 2 and I'm screwing all this up. I got to hurry up and get him to talk. We have to do this." And it's difficult, but I think if people can remember that most providers want you to win. Most providers have a great heart. Most teachers, educators, and advocates are in it because they're passionate about the children,
Yeah.
then I think that really helps.
And when we're talking about kindness and compassion and empathy, it's not just for everybody else, it's for you too, right? Because you do, like you said, you probably beat yourself up a lot as a parent, as any parent, but especially a parent in your situation, you're thinking, well, my son isn't speaking, or whatever the milestone is that he is supposed to be reaching, and you blame yourself, just like you were saying. But you gotta show yourself some empathy too, right? And compassion.
Yes. Self-compassion is so
Give yourself some
important.
grace.
Absolutely. Like you said, that self-compassion piece, but that is probably the biggest thing that I'd struggled with the first several years of Connor's diagnosis. Because even when we did get him in these therapies, you start to see other children that are progressing that maybe were a little bit delayed in areas that we weren't, and now have excelled in other areas. And it's hard. You can't help, we're human nature is to compare, unfortunately.
Right.
And even with our kids, we tend to compare. And you have to give yourself a little bit of grace because it's such a hard position. It's such a hard job. If you can give yourself some credit and grace, then it's going to help.
Yeah, for sure. So, April, I believe, is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Is that correct? Did I get that?
Yes. Yep. Hmm.
Because I've seen some of them without the acceptance and then some of them without the awareness, but it's both, right?
It can be both. Yes.
Oh, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. Um, so you did a thing for Autism Awareness Month, right? Where you reached.
Yes.
You tell the
Oh,
story
sorry.
because you know it better than I do.
Autism, you can say Autism Awareness to Acceptance Month. Excuse me. We were able to gift 4,000 students our classroom kits for inclusion. And these included a book about a little boy named Nick who has autism. And it's basically a way for the teachers to show kindness and compassion in the classroom. And they are given a manual of how to ask questions, how to prompt the students with questions, and just have an open conversation of what differences look like, whether it's somebody wearing headphones, somebody jumping, somebody being really excited, or maybe even a child that doesn't speak, or maybe a child that plays different on the playground. We wanted to really make sure that we included children in grade school because those were the most impressionable. And it was amazing that we were able to reach 4,000 between West Virginia and Ohio. So that was
That's
really exciting.
incredible. That's a huge number of kids.
Yeah, we're excited. We're trying to double that this year.
Are
I'm
you?
pretty excited. Yes, that's our goal.
Wow, that's fantastic. Um, and you've traveled. You've done speaking tours. You've traveled to multiple counties,
Mhm.
spoken at several locations, and did news and radio spots and podcasts, and then you
Yes.
started your own.
Yep.
Did you ever feel pressure to be more hard-edged? And how did you stay rooted in compassion if you were expected to be more hard-edged?
I don't know if I ever felt pressured to be more hard edged as an advocate. I think the most pressure is just not knowing enough, knowing that we're going to be ever changing throughout our son's life and meeting parents where they're at, knowing that we're not going to have all the answers. We're still growing. We're still so far behind in the state of West Virginia that it's
Yeah,
most important to talk about the mission and how we can all work together. But I don't know necessarily if, as an advocate, and I don't always use that label for myself, honestly. I try to just say we are servant leaders. We try to help any and every parent that we come across, whether it's with resources, pointing them in the right direction, like with the insurance navigations, or just the emotional support. But compassion is something that we've led with since we have started. So that is something that's incredibly important. And we try to preach compassion because we want people to be kind to our kids. And you shouldn't have
fair
to
enough.
teach on kindness, but you would be shocked when I go into schools and talk about the classroom kits. The first thing they say is, "Can we talk about autism?" Yeah, absolutely. Talk about autism, talk about disabilities, talk about differences. We try to
Yeah,
use people first language. We try to be respectful to individuals, but most importantly, have the conversation when kids are young. And we tell parents the same thing when you'll be sitting in a store and someone will say, "Don't stare." Well, no, be curious. Ask why. Ask if it's okay, and then ask to go play. There's children that may jump. My son is a jumper. So if you see us out in a store, if you see us on the playground, Connor will be jumping 24/7. And there are kids that will stare. And we are the first to approach and say hi. And that is our way of kind of opening up the door to say, "Come play."
yeah,
Like, we still want to play. We're just playing a little bit different. So, but kindness and compassion
I love
is
that.
that is more or less what we lead with because that's what we want the world to be.
Sure, sure. I love that. A jumper. So he jumps just straight up like a
constantly.
hook shot kind of thing? Like
Um, More or less like he could be it depends on how excited he is. If he is
okay.
excited, the more excited, the higher he's gonna jump. Um, but just imagine someone on a pogo stick without the pogo stick. That
Oh,
is him all the
that's
time since he
awesome.
was an infant.
Uh, that's crazy. So,
Yeah.
was it one of those jumpers? Did you get one of those jumpers for when they were infants? They put it in the door frame. They're on
Oh,
like
yeah.
springs, a little seat. It's like, is that where it started?
Oh gosh. Um, I think for him, as soon as he could stand, he was jumping, and that is just something that, we've gone through, um, trampolines, we've gone through bounce houses, you name it. If he can we've gone through bounce boards, bounce pads,
Oh my gosh,
everything,
that's so much
couch
fun.
cushions, beds.
Um, so when did you start your podcast?
I started the podcast a little over a year ago,
Okay.
just as a curious hobby, and more because we were starting to do more hybrid activities for trainings. And when we started to bring in a lot of therapists, I said, what if we did a podcast so where if they can't attend the therapy session, then they can hear about different techniques and tools to use to stay grounded, focused, and centered. So that was really how it started. And then
Yeah.
since then, we've just been able to talk to a lot of people in um, the autism world. So we've had people like Dr. Carrie Magro on. We've had special education advocates. We've had people from Love on the Spectrum. So we've
Oh,
reached a lot of different speakers, but we've also had a lot of different trainers and professionals on there as well, just to have as much knowledge for our listeners as possible. And that's really the tool that we use it for.
well, I think it gives you a whole new audience, right? Somebody
Sure.
who might be in another state, hadn't heard about Unpuzzled Parents Connect. Now they can learn all about autism and just another way to make people feel less alone, right?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Perfect. One last question. What myths about kindness, empathy, and strong parenting would you most like to debunk for parents of kids with special needs?
What myth of empathy for parents of
What
kids with
myths
special
about
needs?
kindness, empathy, and strong parenting, it's in quotation marks, would you like? And maybe there aren't any. Are
I'm
there
going to
myths about
say a
strong parenting?
couple. For the parents, I think the biggest myth I want to debunk is that your child doesn't show empathy or doesn't have it. One of the
Oh,
biggest misconceptions for children or individuals with autism is that they don't have compassion and empathy. And they absolutely do. They may not be able to communicate that at a young age, but as they progress and get older, my son just started really showing a lot of empathy. Feelings are a very hard concept to teach at any age,
yes.
especially to the younger ones. But for neurodiverse children, it can be even more complex. They're very black and white. There's no in the middle gray. So for Connor, it's difficult to learn those feelings, but he has learned a lot of empathy. Now, if somebody shows a sign that they're hurt, he'll immediately say, "You okay? You okay?" And he'll give a hug and a kiss. So that is one of the biggest misconceptions that I would like to debunk. The other thing is, I think that people have a bad reputation when it comes to gentle parenting. I think there's such a misconception around that term that it can look so different for everyone. Gentle parenting doesn't mean that we excuse the behavior. Sometimes it's just in the way that we are disciplining or more or less showing an understanding, knowing that the child may be having a hard time, not trying to give us a hard time. So that would be the second thing that I would like to debunk for parents.
I love both of those, and we're gonna end it there. Whitney Price, thank you so much for joining me. I absolutely love what you're doing. Wish you the
Thank you.
best of luck on the podcast and the nonprofit Unpuzzled Parents Connect. And the podcast is Get Unpuzzled, right?
Yep.
Fantastic. Wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Human first, before the names, before the label.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Kindness Matters podcast and spending part of your day with us and our guest, Whitney Price. It's truly appreciated, and the hope is that you're taking something positive and encouraging with you into the rest of the week. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend and consider leaving a review or a comment on the episode. Your feedback helps others find the show and keeps the conversation about kindness going. You're also invited to connect with the community on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and YouTube, where more uplifting content and updates are shared. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter so you never miss an update, special feature, or new release. And be sure to check out the brand new merch store, where you can pick up some cool Kindness Matters gear that supports the show, and also the proceeds from every purchase go to a nonprofit doing good in the world. Both of those links are in the show notes. We will be back again next week with another inspiring, uplifting episode. But in the meantime, remember, kindness matters, and so do you.
Before